Welcome back to Tabletop Assault. I'm Ross, and today I'm going to continue my segments on analysing the Necron Codex. Today I'm going to look at the Ghost Ark, the only sort of dedicated transport for the Necrons, and one that's gone through a bit of a change in this edition, certainly from where it was in 7th, which trying to target the rear part of its sighting was just like impossible. So it's interesting to see how that has changed it. So how this works, so I'm going to have a look at the unit in the Codex, have a look at stats, war gear options and special abilities. Then I'm going to have a look at loadouts and suggested role for it, Legion traits or Dynasty Codes in this case that are applicable, and stratagem recommendations. So with that, let's have a look at the Ghost Ark. So Ghost Ark has movement of variable. It starts at 12, which is quite fast, but as it gets entered it goes down to 8, then 4, so it does get really slow. Weapon skill 6. There's really no problem with that. This skill, it goes from 3 to 4 to 5 as it gets damaged, which is kind of what you'd expect. Strength and toughness of 6, which strength we really don't mind, but the toughness may be a little bit lower than we wanted, but the Ghost Ark does have other defensive capabilities. 14 wounds, which is a ridiculously high amount, where I think a Rhino is actually toughness 7, but it is close top. It only has about 10 wounds. 14 wounds is pretty high, so we'll be surviving in the game a little bit longer. Attacks is varied. It goes from 3 to D3 to 1. It's not going to really do combat. It's not its job, so fine. Leadership 10, fine, and a 4-up save, which is a little bit lower, but again, open top stuff tends to have a bit of a less defense, but it does have other defensive capabilities. In terms of war gear, it has 2 Ghost Flare arrays, which is 24 inches, rapid fire 5, strength 4, minus 1 AP, 1 damage. It has living metal to recover a wound at the beginning of your turn, I believe. Quantum shielding, which essentially, each time a model fails saving throw, roll a d6. If the result is less than damage inflicted, ignore that. So anything that's like damage 3 on a 1 or 2, ignore. Really good ability, like I can't stress more anything, quantum shielding has annoyed a lot of opponents. Hovering, instead of measuring distance and ranges from the model's base, measuring 2 from the hull, because the hull is huge, which is very, very important because it does affect abilities. It explodes if model is reduced to 0 wounds, roll a d6 before removing it from the battlefield, and before any model is disembarked on a 6. It explodes and each unit within 6 inches suffers d3 mortal wounds. And lastly, this takes up like a huge chunk of its abilities, is a repair barge. You can make reanimation protocols for slain models from units embarked on the Ghost Ark, even though those units are not on the battlefield. Any models returned to the unit that way are added to the number of models embarked on the Ghost Ark. If any model cannot be returned because there's no more room in the Ghost Ark, they are not returned in this turn. In addition, and this is the important part, at the end of your movement phase you can make reanimation protocol rolls for slain models from Dynasty Warrior units within 3 inches of a friendly Dynasty Ghost Ark. You cannot use this ability on a unit that has been the target of a Resurrection Orb or Orb of Eternity this turn. I'll explain why that's important later on, but it is pretty important. This model can transport 10 Dynasty Infantry models, which must be warriors or characters. It cannot transport Destroyer Lords. And importantly, it does have the fly keyword as well. So that's what you see in the book. What is Loadout? What am I going to suggest? What's my personal view on it? On to the only dedicated transport of the Necrons, and honestly it's an odd one where it's probably more of a support vehicle than it is a support for its abilities and for its damage output than it is for its capacity to transport units. No, that it doesn't do that, it does. It does that fine, but there's a lot more to the Ghost Ark now. First, let's talk about the damage output. The Ghost Flare array is the same as what you see on the Doomsday Ark, minus the massive Doomsday cannon. But this, with this unit, this synergizes pretty well. Essentially 10 Ghost shots, the same amount as in 10 Necron Warriors, and it is rapid fire as well. It probably has a bit more survivability than actual Necron Warriors. Necron Warriors do have reanimation protocol, but they can be easily deleted off the face of the earth. The Ghost Ark does have, quantum shielding on it, which will allow, big heavy head shots to just bang through, so to be deflected off. The Ghost Ark does have variable accuracy though, which is not as ideal. It does mean that although you have, greater toughness and quantum shielding and a good toughness, even if it does lose quite a few wounds, it does begin to become less efficient. So I would not say that, you know, replace Necron Warriors entirely, because, you know, they do bring you command points, but it is certainly interesting to think this way. It is 12-inch movement, so there's no problem, you know, it's high profile, getting into rapid fire range, and it does also have fly, so if you do end up getting charged, you can fly out and rapid fire the target you're just at. So there is a lot of uses in that way when you are thinking about being quite aggressive and actually shooting. And it does put out essentially about the same amount of firepower as 10 Necron Warriors. The difference is, Necron Warriors are troops. This is not. In terms of actual uses that isn't, you know, damage, there is a few for the Ghost Ark. What it does well, it allows a 3-inch aura that allows Necron Warriors essentially, you know, a second round of reanimation protocols. That could be very, very useful, and something I've not actually done in 8th edition. So say you have 2 Necron Warrior squads with an Overlord, a Cryptek and a Ghost Ark nearby all buffing. You're looking at some crazy Necron Warriors, especially if you have a Mortal Pride on the Warlord trait, so you don't lose any when they come to morale phase, they don't go. This is pretty expensive, however, all in, it's going to be a heck amount of shots if you think of it this way. If you had 2 20-man squads, that's 80 shots in rapid fire range, 40 each. And then the Ghost Ark and rapid fire adds on another 20 shots. That's 100 shots in rapid fire range from a unit that's really hard to bring down, because you've got the Cryptek's inbuilt, you're reanimating on 4 up, you've got, you know, you reanimate on 4 up, but you reanimate twice. You hit essentially on 2s because you're going to do My Will Be Done from your Overlords, and then do the Pharaoh, you know, the one you can do it twice. That's a lot of shots reliable, and they are strength 4 minus 1 AP, 1 damage. If Necrons had a reliable way to better their wound score, that would be absolutely devastating. You could also stick on a Necron Lord, I suppose, so they get reroll 1s to wounds, which would help that weakness there. But really, that is a very nice combo stuff there, but it's probably going to be on the closer side of somewhere between, I'd probably say about 800, 900, 1,000 points, give or take. So it is, you know, nice, and it's not going to delete everything off the face of the earth, but it is going to be a heck amount of shots and hard to move. So an interesting one there, when you get a second round of reanimations, Necron Warriors can be hard to move. The other thing as well is that, you know, if for instance, if you had the Ghost Ark maybe in front of the Necron Warriors, why would you put it in front? If someone tries to deep strike in and try and hold you down in combat, then you can essentially, and they fail, then you can maybe throw the Ghost Ark at them. Say it was like something that had, you know, lots of strength 4s and stuff and power swords or something, then yeah, you can consider throwing the Ghost Ark at them and trying to hold them down so they don't charge the Necron Warriors, and then next turn you could fall back and rapid fire into them, just in case. And then if they try and deep strike in, the Ghost Ark itself really does cover a large room. You've got to measure from the hull, I believe, yeah, so you'd have to measure from the hull. It does give it a lot more defensive capabilities than you think. So I think on that note, you know, basically it works well as a buff unit. Also a mobile shooting platform, and also as a good roadblock to your opponent. I actually haven't used one in 8th edition, but I think I might give it a try now, just to see if it's worth it. Really depends on its points, because I think it's quite pricey. Anyway, let's go into Dynasty Codes. Mithrit, Solar, or Fury, each time model with this code shoots an enemy unit that is within half range of its weapon's maximum range. The armor penetration characteristic of the weapon is improved by 1. Probably the best ones go with Ghost Ark, making their weapons -2 AP, which is nice to get through armor. Good way to destroy your opponent. Also is likely working alongside Necron Warriors, who will also benefit from this because, you know, they want to be in rapid fire range. If they're Mithrit as well, really, really handy. Generally, this, you know, if you're aggressive moving Ghost Ark that wants to get in rapid fire range, then yeah, this will benefit heavily. We've also got Nihilaka, aggressively territorial. Reroll hit rolls of 1 for units of this code whenever they shoot, including when firing Overwatch, as long as they did not move in the preceding movement phase and they did not disembark from a transport during this turn. Okay, not the most advantageous for the Ghost Ark. It's suitable being on the move, ideally getting into rapid fire range or out of sticky situations. But on the situation you can stay still and you are in rapid fire range, then yeah, rerolling 1s to hit is super useful. Just a really nice way to get more dice. But really, I think the Ghost Ark's uses are about mobility, which is kind of good, and also fly, getting out of difficult places. So I think it's kind of countering that one, but maybe situations your opponent deep strikes in and then they've just left them out in the open because they didn't make the charge, then yeah, this can be super handy. Stratagems. Damage control override, 1 command point. Use the stratagem at the start of any turn. Pick a Necron vehicle from your army until the end of this turn. Use the top row of that vehicle damage table, regardless of how many wounds left. This ends immediately if the model is reduced to 0 wounds. Bit of a weird one because, you know, Doomsday Ark loves this, but, you know, say you've got a heavily damaged Ghost Ark and you really need it to get into an area, you know, if it's heavily damaged, it does go up by triple the amount in terms of movement from 4 to 8 to 12. So it does mean you get more into a reliable area, but your Bliss skill will improve up to 3+ if it's down at 5, meaning that you can essentially get into rapid fire a lot easier, just lay down a lot of firepower. Again, Doomsday Ark does love this one, but this does also benefit from it quite well. Next up is going to be Quantum Deflection, 1 command point. Use the stratagem when an enemy unit targets a vehicle in your army. That is the Quantum Shielding ability. But before any hit rolls are made, until the end of the phase, subtract 1 from rolls made for your vehicle's Quantum Shielding ability to see if the damage is ignored for each unsaved wound. Quantum Deflection is great, just adds on another layer of defensibility for your Necron units. Again, Doomsday Ark, because it's a high priority target, does tend to draw this stratagem more than any. But again, say you're using this to reanimate lots of Necron warriors, your opponent might get really, really flustered with it, or they might fire something that does like 3 to 6 damage, if not more. I know those crazy harpoons for some knights can do like a horrendous amount of damage. This would actually, quite frankly, ignore entirely because you couldn't possibly roll anything less. Think a 1 always fails. But essentially, well, no, a 1 always passes, it'd be like 6 maybe always fails. I don't know. But essentially, and I don't see where it was written, but either way, it's a really good stratagem. Always good on vehicles with Quantum Shielding. Probably better on a Doomsday Ark, but you never know. Ghost Ark does have its uses as well. Now, on Solar Pulse, 1 command point. Use the stratagem after a Necron unit from your army has declared its target in the shooting phase before any hit rolls are made. Pick one of the enemy units that your unit is targeting. The unit does not benefit. It does not benefit from cover against your unit's weapons this phase. Not one I would usually advise on a vehicle unit, but you know what? Not bad. The mobility of the Ghost Ark means it's possible to get into places that units may be hunkering down, and this will help strip away that +1 save. And when you've got 20 shots, say it's against like Devastators, that could be really, really devastating. So, you know, I advise it for Necron warriors who put out a similar role of this when shooting, except they don't have the mobility and the fly. I think it was one that's well worth remembering. Just if you need to target units that are a bit more vulnerable, then yeah, Solar Pulse will do you well. So thanks again for watching. What do you guys think of the Ghost Ark? I have never looked and thought, nah, I'm just not going to use it, but maybe if you play Necron Warrior heavy, then yeah, it might be an interesting one. I have used Necron Warriors quite a lot in the past, 2 20-man squads. If you do that, then maybe have a Ghost Ark nearby, and you might see some use. I'm interested to give it a try. I don't think it's highly competitive, but I think it could be really fun to use, so I'm intrigued to use it in the future. Thanks again for watching. Make sure you check us out on social media where you can see our upcoming projects, as well as Patreon to help support the channel, bring you more content, because we absolutely love doing so. So thanks again, we'll see you on another Tabletop Assault Battle Report.